Okay, so in this video, I would like to talk about why Virtual World Swordsoul might be more than the meme people have made it out to be. Now, in some aspects, I believe this deck is superior to the regular Virtual World deck, and in some aspects, even to the regular Swordsoul lists we've seen. So, to show you how exciting this deck is, I will show you a deck list in this video that I've gathered somewhat from watching Herman Hansen play this deck quite extensively on Dueling Book over the last days, and giving it some thought myself. Later in the video, we're going to go over a few neat plays that you can do exclusively with this sort of combination of archetypes, which is hopefully going to be interesting to look at. And another interesting thing to look at is, of course, the ban list that's coming up. So I believe this deck will, if anything, be affected positively by the ban list, since we might see Emergency Teleport go to 3. And if that's the case, that card's really busted in this deck. Protoss is a card we don't play, so if you're scared of that being banned, it's not going to be in here. So with that being said, let's get into the deck list. We are going to talk about individual card choices in just a moment, but I also want to recognize that Virtual World has been a deck that has been tried out with other archetypes or normal summonable monsters in the past before. There was always one problem with it, which is that Virtual World needs the normal summon to get into the Virtual World combos sometimes if you open suboptimally. And if you open optimally, you don't really need another archetype to help you out. Well, things have sort of changed with the deck since VFD has been banned. Even the Virtual World combos themselves, they don't auto-win you the game. Even Caligar Crystal Wing with Chuche, it's sometimes not enough. The difference between this version of the deck and the other normal summonable engines or archetypes we've tried with it is that the Swordsoul archetype has inherent synergy with the Virtual World cards. So just to show you an example of, if you open Emergence, you can go into your Virtual World place just with Emergence by summoning Tyre, by searching Tyre, summoning Tyre, go for Boxier, mill a Virtual World name using Boxier to destroy a card you control and summon back the Virtual World name. So then you already get a Virtual World monster on the field. So you can already see that there are a lot of synergies with this deck that we didn't have with other archetypes previously. But let's not talk about the theory too much. Let's go into the deck list. As you can see, we've sort of tried to divide this deck into 3 parts. One being the Swordsoul part. As you can see here, the 10 cards, 9 hand traps, and everything else is Virtual World engine. So from a theory point of view, I don't know if that makes any sense, but from a theory point of view, we want to look at this deck as a Virtual World deck with a Swordsoul engine rather than a Swordsoul deck with a Virtual World engine or a mix of both. But let's go into the deck. I will start with the Swordsoul engine. We play 3 Emergence, 2 Moye, 1 Longyan, 1 Tyre, and 3 Ecclesia. So the interesting thing is that we only play 4 Swordsoul names. The reason for this is that this is the bare minimum we can play that still lets us grind a bit with this sort of engine. 2 Moye, 1 Tyre, you only want to summon them off Ecclesia or search them with Emergence. And 1 Longyan is a card that you never really want to resolve unless you have resolved your Moye before, so you have card advantage. Because in Virtual World, you have to be very careful with the cards in your hand. You won't have a lot of cards in hand in general, so there's not a lot to discard for Longyan. But if we get the extra card from Shishao that we add and the draw for Moye, we have enough cards in hand to use the Longyan and also play around Nibiru that way. And then 3 Ecclesia, that's sort of a trade-off we make for this deck. As you've seen, we only play 9 hand traps in this deck. 3 Ash, 3 Nip, and 3 Imp. We'll go into that later a bit more, but of course, 9 hand traps is not the most in this format. I think in general, it's fine because you will play against a lot of Swordsoul, and Swordsoul is breakable with only your engine, especially with an explosive deck like this. But you still need good engine, right? So if you go second, Ecclesia will help you a lot. Now, granted, one thing I have to say is that sometimes Ecclesia will also be dead in your hand because you won't have a worm to reveal. You only play 11 targets, I believe. Sometimes this will be maybe a dead card in your hand because you don't have a worm to reveal and it doesn't combo with Tyre. But that's a trade-off you sort of take with this deck, and even if you cannot use its effect, it's a level 4 tuner that lets you make plays with your virtual monsters. For example, if you open Ecclesia, Qinlong, and Lily, you at least can make Baron, right? Because there's a level 4 tuner, level 6 non-tuner, right? So there are a lot of neat interactions like this in this deck. Now, another thing that is very cool about this deck, in my opinion, is that Emergence has more applications than ever before, right? This obviously searches any Swordsoul monster, we already know that, but it also adds any worm monster, which we know because it can search Protoss, so we've seen that from the regular Swordsoul deck. But in this deck, of course, we can search our Virtual World monsters, Lily and Gigi. So that makes it so if you open something like Moye, reveal like a Taya or something, go for Xixiao, add Emergence, and you also have something like Kowloon or Qinlong and didn't have a name in hand before, you can make it so you can search one of your names and start your Virtual World plays. So that's, I don't know, it's so cool. It's so cool. And then the other thing is that this can alter the level of your monsters, of course. So especially in Virtual World, this is once again so good because sometimes you want to play around Nibiru. So sometimes something you would do would be Moye, reveal, then summon Laulau from hand, because maybe your hand is somewhat subpar. And then you can go for Baron with Moye and Laulau to play around Nibiru. And then later on banish the Emergence with any card effect, maybe a Taya or something, to make it so your token gets level 3, and then you can go into your Virtual World plays with the token. So these are things that don't come up every game, but are very important to know if you want to play the set correctly, which is not an easy thing to do for sure. So for the Virtual World engine, this is more straightforward. We can go through this quite quickly. 3 Kowloon, 3 Lulu, 3 Lily, 3 Gigi, 1 Laula, 1 Nyanyan, 2 Chuche, and 3 Qinlong. So I think it is rather obvious that we can't max out on all of these cards because we want to get to 40 cards. And Laulau and Nyanyan are not worm monsters. They're not worm monsters, they're psychics, as well as Lulu. They're still searchable, and there was a version where I played Desires where it was a bit annoying sometimes to banish these off Desires. But if you don't play Desires, like, it's totally fine. You can still search them if you need them. I've never had the problem that I didn't have enough of them. And Lulu, of course, we still play 3 times, even though it's not a worm, because it just searches the worm monsters, right? Because it's the best one, of course. It's no surprise. 2 Chuche, because we don't have space for a third one, obviously, but we still need to play 2 for the regular Virtual World combo, so you want to add 1 of Lulu sometimes, and then you still want to dump 1 from your deck to alter your levels. And 3 Qinlong and Kowloon, of course. Qinlong is an amazing card in this format as well because of DPE, so you can negate the DPE. And then we play 9 hand traps. Right, we play 9 hand traps. We play 3 Ash, 3 Nibiru, 3 Impermanence. The reason I don't play Valor in this deck is because I feel like versus Virtual World, it feels so bad because everyone at this point has switched to Heavenly Dragon Circle in their main deck. So using the Valor on a normal summon just feels very bad. With Impermanence, the difference is you can draw it as your 6th card, which makes it a lot better because you can negate DPE, negate Makaba, negate annoying cards. Nibiru is amazing versus Swordsoul, of course, and versus Tri-Brigade Lealisk and these random annoying FTK decks, right? Ash is just always solid versus Fusion Destiny, Nadia Servant, like you name it, right? I forgot to talk about the Emergency Teleport. This, of course, went to 2, which also helps the deck a lot because you don't need your normal summon as much for your Virtual World engine to go off. So that's very important because then you can normal Moye maybe before, then start your Virtual World plays later. Let's go for the extra deck. This is very straightforward. There is not a lot of things you can change in my opinion. We play 1 Coral, 1 Stardust, Charge Warrior, 1 Juju, which is amazing sometimes versus Eldritch. Play Yazi. This card, you make it a lot in this deck. Sometimes you normal Moye going 2nd. They will something like Valor you, Impermanence, and then you use E-Teleport to bring out a Lulu. Go for Yazi, pop a card of theirs, and then go for Taya out of your deck. This card is just incredible. I don't know. 1 Xixiao, don't have space for 2, and you don't really need to in this kind of version. 1 Baxi, of course, our Swordsoul engine is not that big, so these are enough. I mean, yeah, of course, there you have maybe 1 out of 20 games where you would want a second one, but it's fine. 1 Chen, of course, also a way to get into your Virtual World engine is through the Swordsoul cards is by going Taya, Banish, Emergence, make it the token or Taya level 5, and then go for Chen. It's weirdly enough not a play that you will go for often, since Baxia into summoning something like Gigi from Grave will mostly be better. But in theory, it's possible, so you have a lot of cool plays that way. Baron and Shengying is your level 10s. You also need both. There was a time when I thought maybe you don't need your 2nd level 10 monster, and I played Kroko instead, but I felt that if you sometimes, like I said, do plays where you go Moye, summon Laulau, and then go for Baron early, you want to use the token and maybe something like Lily to go for another level 10 monster. And then Zolkin and Crystal Wing. This engine, just very solid. It makes use of your cards that draw you cards, and then a lot of cards to go into Zeus, basically. But Fanfan and M7 especially are just very good cards in general. Fanfan, of course, amazing, banishing DPE and Celestial. And M7 is, of course, amazing because it can be used offensively and defensively by maybe adding a hand trap from your grave to your hand, but also by bouncing a card your opponent has on their field sometimes. And then Zeus, of course, no questions. The side deck is quite interesting in this deck because you don't want to side out any of your engine cards usually. So As you can see, we already play 9 hand traps only because we can't fit more. And we have a lot of engine cards that we don't want to side out because we want to see them go in second as well. You can't really side out a second Chuche. So what I've usually gone for when I play versus combo is siding out a Moye, an Ecclesia, a Lulu, and a Kinlong. So maybe taking out a bit of everything. Maybe siding out Lulu is not the correct thing, but then I think that you need worm monsters in your name all the time, and your Swordsoul engine becomes so good going second as well. It of course also depends on the matchup, right? Maybe where there's a matchup where Ecclesia is very good going second, you want to keep it in. But if you side out the Swordsoul name, you maybe don't want to draw Ecclesia as much. I don't know. I haven't really figured it out quite yet, but having Gamma as an option to side in is very good versus all the combo decks, of course. Dimensional Barrier is a card that you will need versus the mirror match. And by the mirror match, I mean, of course, the Virtual World deck, the Swordsoul Pure deck, and the Virtual World Swordsoul deck. You can also side this versus Invoked, of course. This card is just very stupid in this format. Skill Drain and Imperial Order are both floodgates we've seen in the past for Virtual World, and they're just very good in this deck. Once again, Skill Drain going first is amazing and is a complete blowout, and it's also something people don't expect when they are not familiar with your deck. And Order is Order, right? We don't want to talk about it too much. Feather Duster, 3 Cyclone, 2 Lightning Storm. It's more of like DB rated kind of thing, right? Where you play against Eldritch quite excessively. So you want your back row removal to be there when you need it. You don't play something like Droplet or Twin Twister in general in this deck because you don't have cards to discard pretty much ever. You want to keep your cards in hand. I can barely afford like a discard for Coral Dragon, only when it's really needed. So this is the deck list. Let's talk about maybe 2 to 3 interactions that are somewhat unusual and can come up with this deck. So for one, if your opening hand looks something like Kowloon, Kinlong, and Moye, you can, and any worm monster to reveal obviously, or Emergence or something, you can normal Moye and go for your regular Swordsoul plays, and then end on Shishao and Baron. And then you can set your Kinlong, pop the Kinlong with your own Baron, search a Virtual World monster from your deck, activate Kowloon, and that way go for your regular Virtual World plays. Post-siding, you also have Gamma in your deck, which enables a lot of new combos. So for example, if your Moye gets stopped, you can activate Emergency Teleport and either go for Yazi, as I've mentioned earlier, or you can also go for something like Juju with Gamma and Moye, if maybe you want the removal additionally to your field. Another application for Gamma from Emergency Teleport is that you can go for Shishao with your Lily and your Gamma. That way you can also access your Swordsoul engine with only your Virtual World cards and Emergency Teleport, which is pretty nice. The Backseal line is something I've explained earlier already, but the important thing to remember is that you can once again pop your own Kinlong, maybe summon a Virtual World monster from the grave, so you don't really have the problem of having a Virtual World card on the field ever. Alright, this is going to be it from me. I believe this video is going to be quite long, but it is also one of the most interesting and complicated decks I've played in a while. The learning curve is, as I've said, huge. So if you're someone that likes to go for that challenge and maybe improves their gameplay, I think this deck is something to pick up for sure. And if not, it's at least worth a try. So do that. Let me know in the comments if you've tried it, how you liked it. Maybe you have some improvements for the deck list even. Maybe you've tried the deck already. And if you didn't know about it before, I hope you do now and you respect it. I think it's a great contender in this format. So with that being said, I hope you guys loved the video and I will see you in the next one. See you.